Okay, looks like my screen is showing, so hopefully that will be working for everyone. Is my screen too large? Do I need to shrink it down for people to be able to see it properly? Yeah. Does that work for everyone? Okay, so I made it a smaller size, so hopefully everyone will be able to see it on their screen no matter what the size. Okay, so the topics we will be covering today are focusing on the fundamentals of how CIOC works. So for those of you who have been using CIOC a long time, most of this is going to be things you already know. I will be covering both the community information and the volunteer software because a lot of these things are the same in both. So for the most part, I will just flip over to the equivalent area in the volunteer software to show you where there are any differences between the way the community information software works and the volunteer software. So it should be of equal benefit to you, whichever software that you use on a regular basis. I will be covering everything that is available to the public and sort of highlighting which features are available to the public, as well as any regular day-to-day tasks such as searching, viewing records, printing records, anything that someone doing an INR type role would cover. I will not be covering how to manage records. That will be in the data management session, but I will highlight the different kinds of record updating that there are in the software. And although I will not be covering how to do the setup tasks in the database, because that also is a separate session, I will be pointing out where setup is possible. So if we're looking at a search form, I will identify to you which parts of the search form can be customized so that you, if you are not a super user, you could approach your local super user and let them know that you wanted something changed, or at least are aware that those kinds of changes are possible. And then in future sessions, we'll actually go through how to do the data management activities, how to do the setup activity. Okay, so the first thing I'll start with is I'm actually going to log out of the test site and show you a bit about how the public interface works. The public have a few features available to them. They have the basic search forms, as well as search results, what we call the browse by searches, and there are a number of those, viewing record details, and the feedback form. So the form that I'm on right now is the same kind of form that you get when you first sign into the database. This is what we call our basic search form. The first section is composed of the basic search, where you can do a keyword search. You can isolate that to words anywhere, which indicates most but not all of the fields in the database. So the anywhere is a little bit misleading. There are a number of fields that are excluded from the anywhere search, including some of the extra fields. There's the search by organization name, which is isolated only to fields that are to do with the name of the organization. That includes org levels 1 through 5, alternate names, former names, and legal names. And there is a subject-based search, which is the old CIOC Inform Ontario thesaurus. So only subjects that are within the record or broader terms or narrower terms of the subject in the record. So it's not just the specific subjects that were picked and assigned to that record, but also any of the broader terms or narrower terms of those subjects would also be part of this search. What we don't see in this particular view is there is a fourth one called service categories, which behaves the same way that subjects do, only it's confined to the Ayres info-line taxonomy. And it has the same kind of behavior in that it would include parent terms and narrower terms within the search and use references, meaning alternate forms of the term would also be part of the search if you searched in service categories. When you search words anywhere, that automatically includes everything you would get from the organization name search, the subject search, or the service category search. Note that even in a view like this one where I don't have service categories as one of my choices, if I'm searching in a words anywhere, it's still going to search the service categories. So even if I have chosen not to include either the thesaurus or the taxonomy in my basic search in this particular area, if they're searching in words anywhere, it's still going to, in the background, be searching those fields. Okay. Next, we have our Limit To area, which has 3 sections. The first being the community. The second being whether the organization has a website address, and the last being whether the organization has volunteer opportunities. Obviously, you don't see the volunteer opportunities area if you don't have the volunteer software. The Limit To community is either located in or serving. These refer to the 2 fields in the record, the located in field and the area served field. Just to clarify the behavior of how these searches work, there's a communities table in the software which has a hierarchy of all of the communities right from what we call not limited, which is anywhere, through North America, Canada, Ontario, down to minute communities. And that means that the software can understand where one area is in reference to another area. So whether one area is contained inside another larger area. During searches, that hierarchy is searched. So if I'm searching in Burlington, Burlington is part of Halton Region. So if I'm searching something in Burlington, it's automatically going to come up with a record that says it serves Halton Region. Whereas if I search Halton Region, it's automatically going to come up with a record that says that it's in Burlington, because Burlington is part of Halton Region. This works for both located in and serving. If there is no value in the located in field, so you have said that the record isn't located in any specific place, the software is going to assume that that record is located anywhere. And that means that records that don't have a value in the located in are going to turn up in every search, no matter what community you put in. The opposite is true with areas served. If I don't put a value in the areas served field, it's never going to come up in any search where I'm searching by a particular location, because the software has no idea which areas that record might serve. In both cases, it's extremely important to try and have an accurate and descriptive value in those fields to make these searches work effectively. If you have too many results in your located in, that's probably because you haven't filled in sufficient information and you're getting a lot of records that don't have a value in the located in community, or perhaps you've chosen a value that is too broad. If you're not getting enough results from a serving community, that usually means that you haven't sufficiently filled out enough information in the areas served for the software to understand that that record applies. So you're more likely to get too many results in the located in and too few results in the areas served if you don't have sufficient information in your record. Depending on the setup in your view, you may be able to search for communities beyond the checkboxes that are listed here. So in this particular setup, I have allowed that other community to mean that I can search outside of the basic communities that are defined for the search that I'm looking at. That may apply if you have a small number of records that are in neighboring communities that are part of your database. This type of other community search is most useful for staff rather than for the public because the staff are more likely to know when they want to search outside of their regular service area. The way the other community searches work is that you have to pick a value from that communities table that I was talking about earlier. If you don't know the exact name of the community, you can search for it using the community finder, which I'll pop up right now. So, oh, I need to share it? How do I do that?
Show my screen. You might do it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to share the pop-up window here.
Click the drop-down on the application.
Okay. Does everyone see the community finder now? I think I've got it working. So, if I have some idea of the community that I'm looking for, I can search for it. Let's say that I know that there's a smaller community in Hamilton that I'm looking for, but I don't know the exact name. I can search for Hamilton and identify all the possible smaller communities inside the city of Hamilton. Likewise, if I know exactly where I'm searching for, if someone calls and says they want some small community that I have never heard of, which, believe me, there are lots in this particular communities table that I have never ever heard of, then I can type it in and get a sense of where it's located. So if I type in Glanbrook and I don't know where that is, the software will tell me that it's in the city of Hamilton, and also any of the smaller communities that are contained inside the community of Glanbrook. That'll really give you a sense of where that area is. The communities table that ships with CIOC is very much focused around Ontario, and anyone who is using the software outside of Ontario has largely been responsible for setting up the communities table for their own province. The communities within Ontario are very detailed, although they obviously could use some work, but you should be able to find the vast majority of large and small communities within Ontario. When you're doing a search, you can also choose to use wildcards. So if I search Ham Star, oh, no, it's not working. Sorry, I don't need to use wildcards. It's a contained search, which means it automatically looks for anything that contains the part of the word that I put in. So if I type ham, it's going to bring up, you can see, because it contains ham at the end. Say ham, here ham. If I do narrows my list significantly, I can also click anything that's linked to get more information about that community. So whenever I've brought up a community, as you see in bold here, it will tell me which larger community it's located in. I can click on that to get more information about that and a list of all of the smaller communities contained inside it. If I'll go to Soka. So I'll go to Halton. Sometimes some of the smaller communities are also linked. By clicking on those, you would go down lower and lower into the list of communities. So you can navigate around. So once you've discovered the name of the community that you want to search, you can actually type the name in. Note that you have to type it exactly the way it was in the list of communities, otherwise it will not match. So if I typed just Halton here and not Halton Region, it would not understand that that was the same as Halton Region. The communities that are visible in here are all configurable in this view The view determines a number of things, including which records you can see, what the setup of the search forms are, what fields someone sees when they're looking a record, and so on. We'll cover all of the details of what you can do in a view in the setup session. On this form, I can choose which, if any, communities are part of the Limit To community. So if I don't choose any community and I don't allow other community, it would not show the Limit To community section at all. I can choose whether or not to have the website link. I can choose whether or not to show the thesaurus and the service categories. And I can determine what kind of quick list is showing and how it displays. In this case, I have a quick list here that represents a number of checkboxes that are publication codes. I could rename this quick list to something else. I could have this be a drop-down menu instead of a checkbox. And it may or may not be a list of general headings instead of a list of publications. When it is checkboxes, you have the option of choosing more than one. If you choose more than one, the records only have to match one from your list. So if I pick PubiView and Liz's code, if a record had either Liz's code or PubiView, either one, it would match, okay? So it isn't matching everything you check, it's matching anything you check. Finally, you'll see that there's a record number search. So on this particular search form, this is for a single record number. You'll see later that in the advanced search form, you have the opportunity to provide a list of record numbers. Does anyone have any questions about that, the top basic search? There is search tips that will vary from database to database. So some people may have customized their search tips. There is a version that was distributed to people that was created by one of our members and shared with the membership. On the volunteer side, the search tips are official search tips provided by CIOC. So just to distinguish, the search tips that you may or may not have on your community information software, those are not officially from CIOC. Whereas in the volunteer side, the volunteer search tips, in general, if you have them, you have the official version that was created by CIOC and distributed to the membership. If you don't have the volunteer search tips and you want them, you can get in touch with me at any time and I will provide them for you. Likewise, if you don't have any search tips and you want the version of the search tips that were provided by one of our members, that can be made available as well. If you don't like the search tips that you have, you're free to modify them, even on the volunteer software. Although we have provided what we call an official version, that doesn't mean that you have to use it as is. You do have the ability to change and update it. I will warn you that if you update the search tips that were officially provided, you wouldn't get any updates if we provided an official update to those. The search tips are available to the public, and they are intended to give people an understanding. There's none in the test database. They are intended to give people an understanding of the exact kinds of things that I'm telling you here, what all these areas mean. In addition, it describes a bit about how the wildcard searching and keyword searching works, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. So the keyword searching that you see on your basic search form and also in the advanced search for the keyword searching is what we call a full text search. That means that the words that you provide are searched independently of each other unless you put them in quotation marks. So if I type cat, dog, mouse, it would look for cat and dog and mouse anywhere within either the words anywhere, organization names, and so on. They would not have to be next to each other. So I could have it in a sentence, the cat ran away from the dog chasing after the mouse, and that would match. If I put these in quotation marks, I would have to find the exact phrase, cat, dog, mouse, all in one contiguous block, okay? And in other areas of the software where we talk about a contained search, that's what this is referring to. So it means that it has to match the exact string as you have written it, in the order exactly the way that you have it. Okay? So if I want to be able to search for big dog and cat, big dog would have to occur next to each other just like this. So I would have to find the exact phrase, big dog, but the word cat could occur anywhere else in the record. Wildcards are allowed at the end of words, so and at the beginning of words, but not in the middle. So I can search for star hat, which would obviously match that and what and other things that are impolite. And I could search for hat star, which would match Hathaway and just the word hat and a number of other things. But I could not search H star AT. Okay? That wildcard has to be at the beginning or the end, that asterisk wildcard. The other wildcard that you can use is the question mark. The question mark matches a single character. So this would match what or that, and so on. Okay? So in the case of, let's say I want to do a search for something related to children's services. Because I don't necessarily know whether the word will match child or children, I can choose to search for child star. Child star would match both the word child and the word children. When I did this search, you'll see at the side here, these are subjects from the thesaurus that matched my search. Okay? These are all listed as a partial match. That means that it didn't match exactly what I had written, since I had only written the word child. If I go back and do another search for child care, you'll see that I get an exact match because there was a subject that was exactly the way I had written it, child care, and I still have a number of partial matches where it matched at least one of the words that I typed. In this case, you'll see here's child care, or just the word care here, and here you'll see it matched children. The reason why in the subject search it's going to is a generous search. So it searches forms of the words that you enter. This is very different from the way the records are matched. So if I would not match records that had the word children unless I did a wildcard. But the subject search uses a different kind of search for the partial match, and it will automatically search forms of words. So children is a form of the word child. It would also potentially search different tenses of a verb, various kinds of plural forms of words. It will automatically search those within this partial match subject search, but not through the record search, okay, just to distinguish. That's because the partial match search is very generous. It searches things that only slightly match what we've been searching for, whereas the record search requires that it matches all of the terms that we enter. So if I have child and care, it must match both words. Whereas when I did the partial match search, there's a number of occurrences where it's only matched one of the words or a form of the word. Okay? Very, very different kind of search. While I'm here, for those of you that do use the thesaurus, if you search either words anywhere or you search the subject from a keyword search and you have the thesaurus turned on, then you would get this, what we call the subject sidebar. Okay? The subject sidebar shows you matches in the thesaurus to any of the keywords that you have entered. It obviously doesn't use any criteria other than the keywords that you enter, including in the counts that you see beside here. So just because I searched, let's say I searched childcare in Burlington, when it says childcare 1 up here, that doesn't include any of the other criteria that I may have entered in my search. It only indicates that within the database, in records that are accessible to me, there is at least one record that uses the subject childcare. It has nothing to do with any of the other criteria that I had entered on this form, okay? So this foot care, obviously, has absolutely nothing to do with childcare, but it also, the 1 wouldn't necessarily be located in Burlington. By clicking on any of the subjects at the side, you can perform a search for all the records that are accessible to you, so in your view, that you can bring up. Okay, so if I click on the long-term care facilities, it's going to search for the records that belong to that particular subject. But notice the located in has nothing to do with my previous search. So anytime I'm clicking on the items in the sidebar here, they have nothing to do with any of my other search criteria. New search. Okay, I think I've covered pretty much everything on that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the various other kinds of basic searches. You may or may not have access to these searches depending on what has been configured for you. Likewise, the public may or may not have access to these searches in your particular database. There is the Browse by Industry search. So for anyone using the North American Industry Classification search, we have a Browse by Industry search, which allows you to use this classification system. It's similar to the taxonomy or the thesaurus in that it's a hierarchical organization of classifications of, in this case, it's both businesses and it includes pretty much any other kind of sector you can imagine. So it will include classifications that would apply to nonprofits and other types. It's not just about businesses. It's intended to classify pretty much any kind of organization you can imagine. So anyone running a business database is likely to want to have this kind of a classification system available. If you don't have it in your software right now, you can ask for it at any time, and I will put it in your software, and you can choose to make it available just to staff or to the public. I'm going to go in a lot more detail about the classification system in the section that's specifically about classification systems. So I'm not going to go into great detail about it right now. The Browse by Organization search is simply a list of records available to you by letter. Okay? So very, very simple. And finally, we have here our Browse by Subject search, which is a list of subjects from the thesaurus. Depending on the setup in your view, you may or may not see subjects that don't have records associated with them. So it's possible that I would not see gambling 0 if the setup that had been done blocked subjects that didn't have any records. So it's entirely possible that you only see the subjects that actually have records associated with them, and the rest would be hidden. That's a setup item in your database. You'll notice in some cases we have what we call unused subjects. So these are subjects that can't be added to records, but have a recommendation about alternate used subjects that you should use instead. If you see the word "and," it means that it's an indication that instead of using the subject garden stores, I should be using gardening and stores together in the same record. If I clicked on gardening and stores, it would find only records that had both of those subjects in the record. Okay? See if I can find an or. Here's an or. So here's another unused term that rather than having the word "and," it has the word or. That means that either one of these alternative terms can be used in place of this term gonorrhea. So if I want to search for records that apply to that, I would search either bacterial diseases or sexually transmitted diseases. And if I click on one of these, it would search only on the one I clicked on, not both together. Whereas if I search golf and instructional programs, it would only find records that had both of those terms in the same record. That's our browse by subject search. What I don't have in this view, pardon me, I'm going to log in. What would also be available to the public, which we didn't have in our particular view there, is the browse by service category search. This is the AIRS taxonomy search that is possible to make available to the public. This is the only taxonomy search that can be made available to the public, so none of the other types of searches like the drill down or the keyword taxonomy search that you have access to as a staff member are available to the public. It's not possible, so it doesn't matter what your setup is. This is the only search that the public can have access to. And you have control over whether or not you want to make this particular search available to the public. Besides just whether the search is available, there are other configurations that you can do to say, for instance, whether the public sees these descriptions of each of the terms. So under basic needs, I have this large description. If I go into subtopics, this particular view, I have configured it so only the highest level of the taxonomy shows that description. You'll see that as I come down into the subtopics of basic needs, there is no description showing. So I don't have a description showing for food. I could configure it so that it did have a description. I won't get into how. But if you don't see those descriptions and you want them, that is a setup item. Okay, you determine how far down in the hierarchy you're going to show those detailed descriptions. From any level, you can view the subtopics, and if there are any programs and services, meaning organization or program records that are associated either with that topic or any of the topics that are below that topic, then you would get that from this search. So you'll see it still says 3, and as I go lower and lower down, I finally can see the specifics of how many records there are. Now you'll see I went from 3 at the higher level to suddenly I have 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. Well, that looks like more than 3. That's because you're going to have records that are indexed to more than one term in this list. But at the higher level, it's only 3 records. So if I have record A, B, and C, and at this level I have record A is under brown bag programs and food lines, record B is under food banks and food vouchers, record C is under specialty food providers and food banks, you can see that that's still only 3 records. And at a higher level, it's very clear to me that there are only 3 records. When I come down to this low level, it's broken down, and in any of these individual searches, that's how many records I would get. But in reality, the total from all of these sections is only 3 records. So at any time, I can click on View Programs and Services to see the specific records that have been indexed either at that level or a lower level. In some cases, you'll see this related topic search. The related topics are 2 terms that have a close association with one another. So if I click on related topics, I would see food banks, which is a related topic to food lines. Okay? At any point, I can go up a level, so topics related to food lines. I've done a search. I can go back to view all subtopics of emergency food and get back to my original location. So if I go and actually view the record, it's going to tell me what I searched for. In this case, I searched for food banks. This restrict is only for staff, and I'll explain that later. The public would never see this restrict. You may also wish to, I can go back to view the subtopics of food banks. I can view topics related to food banks. I can expand my search. That means go to the next higher level, which, as you recall, has 3 records, okay, of emergency food. And I can view all the subtopics of food. Okay? The restrict, which, as I said, is only available to staff, means that I would only see records that were indexed to that specific term. So you'll recall that earlier I said it would include any terms that were at a lower level. If I restrict, it's only going to include records that were indexed to that specific term. So in this case, we know, based on going to subtopics, that in fact there was nothing indexed specifically at emergency food. They were all indexed as subtopics. So if I view the subtopics of emergency food here and go to brown bag programs and restrict, you'll see that I've still got my 1 record. That's because that record was specifically indexed to emergency food. I'm going to include taxonomy here if I can, or categories.
Not showing that.
That's fine. I'm updating my site to show the taxonomy just so I can show you what's actually included here. In this record, you can see brown bag programs is actually indexed in this record. So that's why I got it when I did a restricted search. Expand does the exact opposite. So that would automatically include any topics that had been indexed at a lower level. Does anyone have any questions about that basic taxonomy search? I will be going into it in even more detail when we're specifically covering classification systems. But if anyone has any specific question now about how that search works. It's a very simple search. So it doesn't search taxonomy terms together, and it does default to searching at all lower levels. So it is a very generous search. It has been specifically designed for the public to use rather than for staff to use. All right, I want to stick to public-based searches. I'm going to quickly go over some of the equivalent public volunteer searches.
Would we have a question?
Yeah. Sorry, just one question.
You don't include and or Boolean searches in the find box.
Oh, that's correct. So in the basic search, you cannot do anything interesting in terms of and or. It's automatically an and. So if I type the word and, it's actually removed. So and bank. When I do this search, the software actually automatically strips the word and out of my search. Okay, because it's an and. There is no way to do an or search, meaning one or the other, through the basic search. The only way to do that is through advanced search as a staff member. Okay, so when we cover advanced search, I'll talk a bit about what you can do with Boolean searching. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to go just quickly through the kinds of searches that are available for the volunteer software through the public. So they have a similar browse. So their browse by areas of interest would be very similar to what we would expect from browse by subject. Browse organizations with opportunities is just like browse by organization with in the community information side. It would show all the organizations that had opportunities, and by clicking on the organization name, it would bring up the opportunities for that organization. The keyword search also works very similarly. However, it's much more restrictive in terms of the areas that you can search. This is much more restrictive than what staff can do from the advanced search as well. So you can only search in 2 fields from within the keyword search on the volunteer software. You can search the organization name field. This is the same as searching organization name on the community information software. So that's orgs level 1 through 5, alternate name, former name, legal name. And the position description is the actual the description of the duties of the position. Okay, those are the only things that you can search by keyword from the volunteer software. To search by community, from the basic search, you would do a step-by-step search. That allows you to search first a community, then an area of interest, then potentially scheduling, so what times and days you're available, and that would give you a result there. So in this case, I could say, show me all the ones in Acton to do with furniture and appliance repair, and quality control is the specific area of interest. Days and times. Days and times are generous, so if I say Monday morning, that means, it doesn't mean that they only require someone on Monday morning. It just means that one of the times that the opportunity is offered is Monday morning. So it can be a very confusing match, since if someone is looking for an opportunity that only needs someone Monday mornings, they're also going to end up matching opportunities that need someone every morning, not just Monday morning. Okay? In addition to the step-by-step search, the volunteer database has the What's New search, which allows you to bring up records that have been updated or modified within a certain number of days. So I can say, show me records modified in the last 21 days. If there have been none, I can force it to show a certain number of records. So if I force it to show 10, it's going to show me the 10 most recently modified records. That's available to both staff and the public. Finally, the student volunteer search is just like the step-by-step search. However, it also allows you to search by age and also whether or not the opportunity has been marked as being suitable for the Ontario Secondary School Diploma volunteer component. But other than that, it works exactly like the rest of the volunteer step-by-step search. So those are the volunteer public searches. And that's where the two pieces of software differ most strongly. You'll find the advanced search is a lot more similar between the volunteer software and the community information software. Okay, so I'm actually going to do a little bit about advanced search now. Oh, do we have a question?
Michelle Watson has raised their hand, but no question has been typed in. Are you going to take a question, or I'll unmute? Okay.
Did you have a question?
Oh, just lost the audio back. Okay, so it was an audio problem.
Okay, I think we're okay. All right, so next I'm going to discuss the advanced search. Again, I'll start with the community information side. And as I said, you'll find there's a lot more similarities between the volunteer and community information side in advanced search than there is in the basic search. You'll notice to begin with that there are many, many similar components to the advanced search as what is on the basic search, but often you just have more options available to you. One of those is what someone had referenced earlier, the ability to do a Boolean search. You may or may not see this Boolean option on your advanced search form. This is a setting in your view. So if you do not see the Boolean option, you'll have to talk to your local super user, or if you are the local super user, this is a setting that is changed in the view, which determines whether or not that person will have access to the ability to do Boolean keyword searching. Now, why would this need to be an option? The main reason is that the software does not correct the user if they enter in a bad search. And that is very, very possible if we aren't doing the automatic correction to strip out any of the things that are likely to make the search fail, which is what we do in the search that's available to the public, the basic search. if people are doing very complex Boolean searches and they make a mistake by leaving out a connector or a bracket or so on, that will actually cause their search to fail completely. So if I do this and that, it's going to fail. And the reason that failed is I'm not allowed to have two connectors right next to each other. I would have to do a search for this and that, and then it would work. So that is why the Boolean option isn't available to the public and why it isn't necessarily available by default to all staff members. Rather, the person who's configuring the view, who's deciding what people are allowed to do, has to make a judgment call about whether it is an effective thing to give that particular set of users access to Boolean searching. Because obviously it can be very helpful if you know how to do it and you understand that you have to be very careful to form your searches correctly. But for people who aren't necessarily informed about how to properly build their searches, it can be frustrating or confusing when those searches fail. So how do we properly structure a search like this? Most of the same rules apply as what I described in the basic search. So you can do single words like cat, dog, mouse. You can do phrased words like big dog. You can do wildcards like cat, star, or that. All of those apply. However, as soon as I turn this Boolean option on, I must put connectors between every term I'm searching. So I have to say cat, or dog, or mouse, or big dog, and cat, and that. Okay? Without those connectors, my search will fail. Now, the question is, if I'm saying cat or dog and mouse, does that mean cat or dog and mouse? Or does that mean cat or dog and mouse? Well, the best way to make sure that your searches are doing what you intend them to do is to enclose items in brackets whenever there is a chance for confusion. So in this case, if I mean either cat or dog, and it has to have mouse, I would put cat or dog in brackets, and then I could say and mouse. Whereas if I want either the word cat or both of the words dog and mouse, I could put the brackets around dog and mouse, meaning that that's one idea that I have to match, the words dog and the word mouse together, and it has to match either dog and mouse together or just cat. Okay? So you can do as many of these brackets and structured searches as you want. The brackets are really only important if you are creating a search that has some ambiguity. So if I say cat or dog or mouse, there's no ambiguity there. It's very clear that it's one of the three. It's either cat or dog or mouse. It's only in case, and similarly if I say cat and dog and mouse, again, there's no ambiguity. It's very clear that I mean that it must match all three. So it's only in cases where there's some question about what my intention is that I would want to put brackets in to clarify to the software what exactly I mean. Okay? So again, the critical things to understand about a Boolean search, as soon as you do Boolean searching, you must include connectors. It's not an option. I can no longer search childcare. I could no longer do this search, childcare, as a Boolean search. I would have to say child and care, or I would have to enclose childcare in quotation marks to make those two words into a single idea, a single component, okay? And I can then connect multiple components with connectors like and, or, and not, or not. And that's the other very interesting thing that you can do with the Boolean searching is the word not. So I can say not cat, and that record would have to not contain the word cat. So I could do a search for dog and not cat. That would mean the record would have to contain the word dog, but it would also have to not contain the word cat. All right? So that's the basics of Boolean searching. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Other than that, oh, and also you'll note, oh,
review the difference between quotations and brackets?
Absolutely. Okay. Quotation marks are a way of containing several words as a phrase. So it's how I make multiple words become a single word. So in this case, when I said childcare in quotation marks, it would have to match the phrase childcare. So the word child and a space and the word care right next to it. Okay? Whereas if I do a search child and care and put it in brackets, that's saying it has to match the word child somewhere and the word care somewhere, but they don't have to be next to each other. They could be anywhere in the record, okay? Anywhere within the fields that I'm searching. But by putting them in brackets, I'm associating them as a single item for the purpose of connecting to something else. So, or daycare. If I don't have or daycare, there's no reason that I need to put the brackets there. The only reason that I need the brackets is because I want to contain these two things as a single idea, child and care together, or daycare. All right? The brackets would not be necessary if I wasn't also searching or daycare. However, if I could also do like child care or daycare, that would mean the phrase child care or the word daycare. Notice that in this case, I don't need brackets because I'm not connecting two independent units. And it can be more than two. So it could be child and care or services or daycare. So this is a little more complex. So in this case, I want to match the word child with either the word care or services, and that whole idea, meaning child with either care or services, I can match either that or the word daycare. Okay? So brackets allow me to group multiple ideas together, whereas quotation marks allow me to create a phrase, meaning several words in sequence, okay, that have to occur in the exact order that I specify. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that in advanced search, you do also have the option to specify whether you're searching all or any. Any is not the same as Boolean. So if I do dog, cat, mouse, in any, it's going to match dog or cat or mouse. I do not need to put the word or, okay? Unless I'm doing Boolean, I don't have to put ands and ors. And in fact, if I wrote dog or cat or mouse in any, then it would just remove it. The software would actually, behind the scenes, remove the words or, because those words are not allowed unless you're doing a Boolean search. Any other questions about the keyword searching? Anything to do with keyword searching? Good? Okay, so moving on, we'll talk a little bit about record numbers. Record number searches, you can list multiple record numbers. So I could do ABC001, ABC002. Unlike on the first page of the basic search of the software, we can only do one record at a time. This would allow you to search for a group of records that are all in one list. So if you had a spreadsheet containing a large number of record numbers and you needed to be able to isolate them all at the same time, this is one way that you could do that. Okay. Oh, by the way, my biggest tip for using the advanced search form, when in doubt, please hit clear form. If you're not getting the results that you expect, what often happens is someone does a search, uses the back button to go back to the advanced search form, thinks that they've changed all their criteria, and didn't realize that, somewhere down here there was something still selected. And because it is a very long form, it's quite easy to accidentally miss a piece of criteria that you didn't take out, and that can result in very strange search results. So before you do any search, or if you know you're getting strange results, my first recommendation is always hit clear form, and then you know you're starting from a nice empty form with no criteria, and you know you don't have a previous set of search criteria sitting around making a mistake of your new search. The community search works exactly as it does on the basic search. We also have the option of searching by street address. Again, the street address is something that can be added or removed from the form at the discretion of the person doing the setup of your view. The street address allows you to search as the street address field. You can type in the name of the street and optionally the street type. So if I was searching for Main Street, I could just type in Main, or I could type in Main and choose Street. And if I knew that it was Main Street West, I could optionally say Main Street West, okay? And it would only bring up records that were located on Main Street West. In addition, you can search by postal code. This is a generous search that automatically wildcards whatever you put in. So if I put in L8S, it would automatically find any postal code that began with L8S. If I just put L8, it would be any that began with L8, and so on. So I could do L8S4, and it would be any postal code that began with L8S4. Aegis. I want to quite clearly explain how the Aegis search works because this can be a little complex. And actually, now that I'm doing the Aegis search, I realize that there is an age search available for the basic search, which wasn't on the view that we were in, so I'm going to add it in so we can see how that works as well. This Aegis search that's available on the advanced search is very different than the age search that's available on the basic search, assuming that you have an age search on your basic search. This age search allows you to type in either a single age or a range of ages, and it will match to the record either any in given range, meaning at least part of that range matches, or all in given range. I'll give you an example of how this is practically put to use. So if you have a caller who is looking for child care for their 6-year-old and their 18-month-old, if you did a search serving a person aged 1.5 years to 6 years, and you said all in given range, that would mean that it would only be matching services that served both the 18-month-old and the 6-year-old. If I said any in given range, then it would match services that served either the 18-month-old or the 6-year-old or anything in between. So this would match a service that served from 0 to 3. It would also match a service that served from 5 and up. Anything that in any way touches the range of ages that I provided here would match. If I only enter a single age, meaning the 18-month-old, 1.5 years, it doesn't matter which one I choose because I don't have a range. So whether I pick any or all is going to give the exact same results. This only matters, the any and all, if you have a range, okay? So 2 different ages that you're trying to match against. So if I'm doing a 0 to 6 because I'm trying to identify programs that apply to the early years mandate, I would want to do any in given range because any program that has crossover with the 0 to 6 is applicable to this particular search. Whereas again, if I have a caller who specifically wants a child care center that's going to serve all of her children, then I would want to do all in given range so that I could identify only the services that would apply to the 18-month-old and the 6-year-old. Does anyone have any questions about the age search? I'm going to take a moment, if you don't mind, and add the other kind of age search to the main menu so that you can see what that one looks like. Oh, I do have it. Oh, here we go. It wasn't on the public search, but it's on the staff search. The age search that is available from the basic search is based on a list of age groups that you define yourself. So you would define, if it says children, you would define what you mean by children. Maybe that's 0 to 6, maybe that's 0 to 12, youth, the same thing, and you may not want them to be called children, youth, adult, seniors. You can pick any age range you want, and they can overlap with one another. So it would be possible to have infants 0 to 2 and also have children 0 to 12, okay? You can have as many of these age groups as you want. And again, this is someone doing the setup would decide whether or not to include these age groups on this form. When I do a search based on these predefined age groups, it's going to match any record that has any crossover with that age range that I've specified. So it's the same as in the advanced search where I said any in the range. That's how this search works. So if I'm doing a search for children, and children means 0 to 12, any service that has any kind of age crossover between 0 and 12, whether that be 8 and up or 0 to 3, is going to match when I search for children. Number of employees, if you are using the number of employees field, you may want to include this on your advanced search form. There are two components to the number of employees field. There is a range, which is a predefined set of possible ranges of total employees for the organization. Or there are a set of 3 fields to do with the total part-time and full-time employees at the organization. And you can search at least a certain number of employees or no more than a certain number of employees, either in any of the 3 fields, meaning the total employees, the full-time, or the part-time or seasonal employees. I know most of you aren't actually using the employees field, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. The next section you'll see 4 new fields that were part of the last software upgrade. So again, many of you aren't going to be using them at this point. These are all checklists that you can define the contents of yourself. So you would decide how you wanted to use these checklists. And depending on what you called them, that would determine what they were called on this advanced search form. So you'll see that this says extra checklist, but if I had named the field extra checklist to be, community partnerships or something, then that's what it would say on the extra checklist area in the advanced search form. So when you're looking at the advanced search form, you may not see extra checklist. It would be whatever you had named that field in your database. I'll just give an example here. Let's find the extra checklist. So you'll see that that is now renamed to a special checklist. So just because it isn't called extra checklist in your form, it doesn't mean that that's not what it is. There's the three fields that you can rename, the 3 extra fields. One is the checklist, and then there are 2 drop-down fields. Okay, drop-down A and drop-down B. And again, you will see whatever it is named in your database. So it's not likely if you're actually using the field that it's going to be named extra drop-down A. It's going to be named whatever applies to your particular circumstance. These checklists are to be used for whatever you want. They are non-standard, meaning you are not obligated to use them for any particular purpose for data sharing. You can use them for whatever internal purpose you like. So a special project for yourself, whatever. There's no standard value that you have to apply to this field. It's whatever you want to use it for. The values in those checklists, again, are whatever values you have chosen in the setup to be in that checklist or drop-down. So you can pick a value and have it only find records that have that particular value associated with them. Memberships is the same. You can't rename the memberships field. It's called memberships, but the values within the membership list would be whatever you chose them to be. So maybe that would be Inform Canada members, Inform Ontario members. If you have some kind of local partnership that particular organizations have a membership in, whatever works for your local needs, whatever information you want to track, that's what you would put in this this checklist, and you would then be able to identify records that belong to that particular group, whatever that may be. Any questions about those 4 new fields? Okay. You will not see these on your form unless the person doing the setup has specifically added them to your form. So if you don't see them now, that's because they're not going to be included by default. Someone would have to go into the setup and purposefully include those items. Last email requesting update. So there's a feature in the software called an email update request that allows you to send it a request to the organization to update their information. Because we don't want to be harassing people and emailing them when we just emailed them last week, because that means they're going to be saying, stop sending me emails, I don't want to have all these emails coming at me. You can confine your searches to only people that have not been emailed recently. The software automatically puts the date that the software last sent a request to that organization so that you can use that to prevent yourself from accidentally harassing someone who has already been sent a request. So anytime you are doing an email update request, this is criteria that you should be using. You need to pick what you feel is a reasonable length of time. Maybe that's 30 days, maybe that's 14 days. That's really your choice about how frequently you're willing to send them a message. But if I say the last email requesting update was more than 30 days, then I would know absolutely if I'm sending messages to the records from this search that they had not been sent another message within the last 30 days. Okay? So for instance, a common search would be the last email requesting update was more than 30 days, and the update schedule, meaning the time that it's next due for an update, is in the past. So that would be an incredibly common search that you would expect to do. This would show you all of the past due records, meaning records that should have been updated because their update schedule date has passed, but I have not sent them an email update request within the last 30 days. If you were looking for records that were going to come up for updating within the next month, I could say update schedule is next month, and it would only show me records where I hadn't sent them another request within the last 30 days, and they are due to be updated within the next month. Okay? So that leads me nicely into our 2 custom date searches. You do have the ability to search any date field in the database, either by a predefined list of useful values such as in the past, in the future, today, yesterday, and so on. We also have is null and is not null. Is null meaning there is no value. Is not null means there is a value and I don't care what it is. And you can search, you can actually search the same field twice. So in the case of update schedule, I would say the update schedule is in the next month see if I can. Trying to figure out when. I mean, there are some cases where it's useful, but it's pretty rare. It is possible to pick the same date twice, is the bottom line. It's really more useful. It's not really useful in the date search. It's more useful in the other custom field search, but it is possible to have two criteria twice. So I could search update schedule two ways. If I did update schedule next month and update schedule previous month, I would get nothing because those two would be completely conflicting values. Besides the predefined values, I can specify custom dates. So if I want to say update schedule is on or after the date 2nd of October 2008, and before the date 2nd of November. So any random date, you can specify one or the other. So I can just say before the date 2nd of November, or I could say just on or after October the 2nd. Either one. However, it's an or. So if I have included this predefined criteria, it's going to ignore whatever I put down here. So it's important to make sure this is blank if you want to include a custom value. And you can do two different dates, or as I said, it would technically allow you to search the same field twice within the same area. But if they were conflicting, then you wouldn't get any results. Are there any questions about the date field searching? Okay. So the custom field search that you see here is any text fields in the database. So over here we have any date fields in the database, and here we have any text fields in the database. Note that the list that you see here is not a complete set of all the fields. It only includes text fields, meaning it wouldn't be, you couldn't search for non-public this way, or any date fields, or any number fields, anything like that. Anything that isn't a text value, you can't search this way. And also, the fields that you can search are determined by the fields that you can see. So if the field is not available in the display page, the record details page in your view of the software, you cannot search that field. So that's the first thing to check. If you're trying to search a particular field and you know it's a text field, it's words rather than a number or a date, the first thing to check is, can you see that field in your record details page? Is it something that you can see as a display? Because if you can't see it, you can't search for it. All right? That is a really key thing to understand. All right. So the way that the custom field search works is you can pick one or more fields. So in this case, I'll pick description and let's say supplementary description. The way that I do that is by holding down the Control key, which allows me to pick multiple items. Again, I can hold down the Control key and click to unselect items as well. So you'll see I have supplementary description selected and description selected. I can say it contains, meaning it has the exact phrase I'm going to type. Does not contain, it does not have the phrase that I'm going to type. Is null, meaning there is nothing in this field. Is not null, there is anything in this field, any value at all. Okay, so in this case I could say contains, if I said contains childcare, this is the same as me putting a phrase in quotation marks up here like this. Okay, because this phrase search is the same as me doing this contain search. Lost my spot down here. Well, it's not the same, but it's the same kind of theory. You have to find them in order. One thing to understand about the contain search is it doesn't respect word boundaries. So if I search for the word Pam, it's going to find Chamberlain Hamilton, Hams, Hamhock, Sham, anything that has just the letters HAM in sequence, okay? It's as if I had wildcards on either side of anything that I type. So that's a really important thing to understand. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of a word. It's just going to try and find any of the letters or spaces or punctuation that I type here in exact sequence. So that's if I'm doing a contained search. You'll note that there's two custom settings here that you probably won't use very often, but it's important to understand what they mean. If you're picking more than one field from this list, like in my case I picked description and supplementary description, this applies. All the selected fields must match. If I choose all the selected fields must match, I would have to find HAM in both the description and the supplementary description. If I don't select this, then I would have to find HAM in either the description or the supplementary description, but not both. The second option includes selected fields in results display table. I'm going to get into changing our display options in a moment. This means that you would be able to see these fields in your search results. So it's a very quick way to make sure that your search results have the information that you were looking for. If I'm looking for something that contains ham and I include it in the results display table and I quickly realize I meant, Hamilton and I'm getting chamber pot because that still has ham in it, it's a very good way to identify whether or not your search results are actually giving you what you intended. Okay, so all this does is it temporarily includes any of the fields that I've selected over here in my search results so that I can just verify the quality of my search results. You have two sets of these custom fields, okay? So, and they operate independently of each other. You can pick the same field twice. So I could say subjects contain child and subjects contain abuse, and it would have to match both. It would have to match subject contains child and subject contains abuse, because these are two independently operating criteria. Are there any questions about custom field searching? Okay. The rest of the form is really easy. We have record owner. The list here is determined by any record owner agency that has been set up marked as owning community information records. On the volunteer form, it would be any agency that had been marked as owning volunteer records. If you have the volunteer software, you may or may not have configured the option to search based on being able to identify records that either have or do not have volunteer opportunities. So it's often very useful for those using the volunteer software to have sufficient permissions in the community information software to do an advanced search to allow them to search like this. So search for records that have opportunities or no opportunities and so on. Publications. Depending on your view, in this section you would either see publications or general headings. If you are in what we call a limited view, then rather than seeing publications, you will see a list of general headings for a particular publication. The list you see here is going to match exactly to the list that you see in your basic search page. So if your basic search page has a list of publications, that's what you're going to see here. If your basic search page has a list of general headings, that is what you're going to see here. When searching for publications, you have the option in advanced search of saying has none, meaning it hasn't been assigned to any publication. If it was a general heading, it would be the same. Has not been assigned to any general heading. Has any, meaning has any publication, or in the case of general headings, has any general heading, or has any from, and then you pick from your specific list. Again, to pick multiple items, you hold down the Control key and click on the items you want to add or remove. You can also, if you're doing a big list that is congruent, one after another, you can just hold your mouse down and slide all the way down. Okay. You can also choose to exclude publications. So if I want to say, show me all of the records that have 211 telehealth but not 211 YJS, I could do it like that. I just say has any from 211 telehealth and does not have 211 YJS. So for instance, if I knew, I'd probably do it the opposite. If I want to find all the 211 YJS because I know I want to include them in the 211 telehealth list, I could do search has any from 211 YJS, doesn't have 211 telehealth, and then I could add all of the 211 telehealth to those records. Distributions work exactly the same way, except of course with distribution codes. Finally, we have our email search. By default, it will search all records no matter what their email status. If you are going to perform an email update request, one of the things you're going to want to select is Can Send Update Request. This will limit it to only records that both have either an email or an update contact email and have not been marked as blocking email update requests, meaning that person hasn't sent you a message saying stop sending me email update requests, and then there's a flag in each record where you can say that that particular organization does not want to receive update requests by email. So if you select Can Send Update Requests, it has to meet all those criteria. It has to have an email available for use to send an update request, and there has to be no block protecting that organization from receiving email update requests. Likewise, if you want to identify records where you're going to have to call them by phone or fax them or mail them, you can search Cannot Send Update Requests and easily create a list of those records that you know you're going to have to do a manual updating process for. And of course, you have a more general way of just searching for an email or only without email, and that's just searching that they have an email available. It does not mean that you can send them an update request. It just means that they have an email specified. Public status. If you are allowed to see non-public records, you will see this public status field, which allows you to confine it to only public or only non-public records. If you're not allowed to see non-public records, this search option wouldn't be available to you. Likewise, if you're allowed to see deleted records, you can manually choose to include deleted records in your search. By default, deleted records are excluded from your search. The only way to include deleted records in your search is to go into advanced search and specifically request that you include deleted records in your search. Otherwise, they will be automatically omitted. You can only choose to include the deleted records if you are actually allowed access to them in the first place. Hide subject sidebar. You'll recall I said that if you're doing a Words Anywhere search or a subject search, and you have the thesaurus available in your view, that it would show you that subject sidebar that appeared on the left-hand side with the exact match and the partial match from the thesaurus. You can choose to exclude that when you're doing your search. So if you know that it's not relevant to the work that you're doing and you're doing a keyword search, just click Hide Subject Sidebar, or it will already be clicked here. You can choose to just not show it. Okay. Finally, we have Add SQL. This particular feature is only available to the highest level accounts in the database. That is because it can be quite a dangerous feature to give to people and is quite prone to error because you have to know exactly how to use SQL in order to make use of this. That said, I will often give people add SQL instructions on the CIOC bulletin board if they're trying to perform a particularly complex search that they can't perform using any of these predefined methods on the form. So, and yeah, as Chris is just saying, there's also a number of add SQL that I have given out in the past that have been archived and posted to the CIOC FAQ, the frequently asked questions. So there's a number of resources available to you to get information about different kinds of special searches that would be done using this method. I'm not going to explain here how to construct an add SQL search. If you already know SQL, then it's there and available to you to use. Otherwise, if you ran into a situation where you needed to do a very complicated search and didn't know how to do it, all you have to do is post on the bulletin board with your request, the kind of search that you're trying to do, and I would respond and let you know how to do it with add SQL, assuming that you have the permissions to do it. So there's no pressing need to know how to do it. If you run into a situation where you need to do it, just ask. I will respond with the SQL that you need. Okay, any questions about the Community Information Advanced Search Form? I'm going to quickly run down a few items on the volunteer form, but it's almost exactly the same. So.
Oh, and the answer.
Oh, yes. So the one and only way to get all the records in your view, this is the only way, is to come to your advanced search form and click Include Deleted Records and search. That will bring up every single record in your view. Okay? That is the one and only way to do it. You cannot do a search with no criteria from the basic search. It's not possible. So you have to do it from the advanced search by clicking, if you want deleted records, by clicking Include Deleted Records. Okay? Any other questions?
Thank you, Gary. Gary pointed that out.
All right, so I'm quickly just going to run through the differences in the volunteer advanced search menu. Conceptually, it's, sorry, I'm so used to a bigger screen here. Conceptually, it's very, very similar to what you saw on the community information side. So again, it has almost exactly the same kinds of criteria that we saw in the volunteer step-by-step search, but in addition, we have a number of checklist fields and so on that you can pick from. So you can hold down the control key to pick multiple values. It would match any of the values that you selected. You can do this for a number of those checklist fields. Transportation works just like we saw with publications, where you can both include values and exclude them. So I can say it has to be on a bus route and it cannot require a car. We have the option of searching for the OSSD component. If you are not in Ontario, you can exclude this from your advanced search form in your setup. Again, the record owner is going to list any of the agencies that have been marked as owning volunteer records. We have the exact same custom date searches and text searches as we saw in the community information. And again, we have exactly the same email, public status, deleted status as we saw, and the same SQL. In addition, the volunteer software has a concept of a display until date, which is an expiry for the record. When the display until date has passed, that record disappears from view, but it's not the same as having it be deleted. The intention with the display until is for seasonal records, things where you may want to recover that record later, so that the record can disappear temporarily from view, but that you can recover that record later so that if it comes back again next summer, you can just go back in and update the same record. So just like deleted records, by default, those expired records are going to be hidden, and you have to specifically choose to show records that have expired. Okay? And again, the only way to do that is through the advanced search form, unless you've configured in your view to show expired records, which you can do. All right, so it's very, very similar to the community information advanced search. It has a lot of the same concepts. The only difference is these checklist fields are an addition that's very different from what the community information side has. Okay, so that's all of our searching. So if anyone has any questions about searching, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm going to move on and talk about search results.
If you want a user to have access to advanced search CIC, you set the user to agency admin.
Okay. If you have a volunteer partner and you want to give them some limited community information side privileges such as the advanced search, how do you do that? What I recommend doing, and I'll go into this in detail in the setup one, but I'll touch on it now. What I recommend doing is making a user type just for them. So it won't have any updating privileges whatsoever. But all you have to do to give them access to advanced search is give them a user type of any kind in the community information database. So it can have absolutely zero privileges of any kind, no updating privileges, no publication privileges, no anything. Just basically searching privileges. And as long as they have that, they will be able to do that advanced search. But they won't be able to do anything else. So that's generally what I would recommend. Okay, I'm going to talk now about your search results. So, okay, your search results. We talked a little bit about the subject sidebar. I'm not going to go into that any further other than can hide the subject sidebar using that hide subject link. The search results that we've seen here now are based on what I have chosen to include in my search results. As a member of the public, I don't get a choice. What I see is the name of the organization and where it's located. That is all. You cannot give any further information to members of the public other than what is the organization's name and where is it located. The only customization you can do to the search results for the public is whether it's in the order of the organization name or the order of where it's located. But for staff, you have complete control over the way your search results are displayed using change display options. And I'm going to show that to you. Okay. Change display options is a very, very important thing to understand and to use because it can really impact how effectively and efficiently you can do your work. You can choose pretty much any field in the database that you want to show. You can do that on a temporary basis, so just for this particular search, or you can do it on a permanent basis. So if I know that I always want to be able to see the phone number field, I can change my settings so that every single search I do by default is going to include the phone field. Besides that, you can include or exclude the record owner. If you're a data manager, you may want to, by default, include the update schedule, so when that record is next due to be updated. And there's a number of actions that you can get quick access to as well. So this top section of the form is to do with which fields you can see, so show fields. Okay? There are some predefined ones, which are done by checkbox, so these are really commonly used fields. And then there are the custom fields. Again, the list of custom fields is going to be determined by which fields you are allowed to see in your record display. If you don't see a field in the list here, you probably also do not have access to it in your record details page. So the way to get it here is to get it in your record details page. Just like in other areas, if you want to select multiple fields to display, you do it using the control key. You can choose as many fields as you want, although obviously if you have a large number of fields that you're displaying, it's going to make it very difficult to view the information because there's just going to be too much on your screen. But you can include quite a large number of fields. And because you can save your search results and then say open it as an Excel file and use that almost like an export, there are going to be cases where you are going to want to include a very, very large number of fields, not really because it's convenient for your search results, but because maybe you want to use it for another purpose, such as getting it into Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to choose Office Phone. I'm using Firefox, so I don't know if you noticed that quickly jumped to Office Phone, but I'll show you how that works. It's really simple. In Firefox, if you are working in a drop-down or a list box, if you simply type the first letter of the value that you were trying to identify, in this case it was Office Phone, it will jump down to that value. If I was, say, looking for description, I could type D, and I could continue hitting D, and it would go through every single value that begins with D until I found the one I wanted. If I wanted supplementary description, I could type S, and it will go through all the S's until I find the one that I particularly wanted. Oh, and I passed it already. So rather than scrolling through and potentially missing it, it can be a lot faster. Simply make use of your browser's features and type the first letter, jump to the one that you want. In this case, I want Office Phone. And again, hold down the Control key to select multiple. Click the Clear Selections button on this side to clear anything that may have already been chosen, rather than having to scroll through the list and try and figure out which ones you have to unclick. Just hit Clear Selections and you can start from scratch. I'll start with just doing that change. I'll update my display. After I update my display, it's only temporary, meaning it will only last for the session in which I'm working. That might be all day, or it might be until I log out of the software. Whereas if I pick Save these settings as my default, then every single time I log into the software or my session expires, it's automatically going to revert back to what I had saved as my default. When I'm done with my settings, I'll close the window, reload my search results. Pardon me, I reloaded my search results, and you can see now it includes the Office Phone field.
In IE7, you may have a hard time figuring out what to do to reload. Press F5.
F5, yes, that's true.
Because IE7 has decided that no one actually wants to reload, and so has taken away the reload button.
Yeah, and because of that, in future versions of the software, we recognize that we're going to have an automatic refresh built into the software to account for the fact that Internet Explorer makes it a real pain for you to reload the page. And that's because there are a lot of websites these days that don't want you to use the back button, the forward button, or the refresh button. So if you use Internet Explorer, F5 is the way to refresh your page if you can't see a refresh button on your taskbar. We do generally recommend that you use Firefox. However, officially we support Firefox and Internet Explorer on the staff side, and any browser, if a report is made on the public side for any issue in any browser, we will investigate it. On the staff side, we officially support Internet Explorer and Firefox. Okay, so that's the basics of what change display options do. They change the columns that you can see and also the order in which fields appear. So I just did something to change show fields. Now I'm going to talk about show options. So the options that you see listed here are dependent on your permissions. So if you're a super user, you're going to see a lot more options than what you see as a regular user or even an agency administrator. If you use a Client Tracker application, that would determine whether or not you would see Client Tracker as one of your options, and so on. But every single person should at minimum see Select Checkbox and Web Enable Custom Fields, no matter what your permissions are. If you are not allowed to update records, then you would see the update record would rather than show an update link, would show Suggest an Update, which is our way of changing a record without changing the record directly, but rather suggesting a change to the record. So I'm going to include some of these options here. Web Enable Custom Fields, just to be clear, means that if I'm using a value such as the subject, where in the record details it's normally linked to a search, that it would also be linked in my search results. So I'll show you what that means by clicking subject. Again, I'm going to reload my page, and you'll see that a number of new columns were added. One is the subject field, and the subjects are linked. That's because I said I wanted to web enable my search results. If I didn't have it web enabled, which I'm going to do, you're not going to be able to see me do. I've just turned off web enabled, and you'll see that now the subjects are no longer linked. So I would no longer be able to click on these subjects to perform a new search. The update feedback column will show the word update if this is a record I'm allowed to update, and feedback if this is a record that I'm allowed to suggest an update for. You'll notice that on this particular list, all of the update links are bright red. That means that these particular records have gone past their update schedule, meaning they should have been updated some time ago, but were not. So they're overdue to be updated. That's why they're appearing in red. I also see an update publications link and a link to see a mail form and email and update request. I'm going to remove some of these I've just updated to remove some of those fields. So you'll see I re-web enabled my subject field. So if I clicked on one of those, it's kept my my changed search display, and it's performed a new search for the subject that I clicked on. One of the things that I included in my change display options was called the select checkbox. That means these little boxes that we see next to each of the search results. This is a very important piece of functionality, especially for data managers and super users. But even if you're not a data manager or a super user, this can be a really useful feature. The one thing that you have access to, no matter what kind of privilege you have, is creating a new result set. That means I can pick just a few records that apply to what I'm trying to do and say new result set, and it will show only those records that I've chosen. Why would I want to do that? For instance, if I want to be able to print out my list, if I want to generate a phone list, and I've included the organization name and the phone number. Another reason is, as I'm going through records one by one, such as going to this record, you'll see other search results, next, last, total. I can just go through the ones that I was interested in one by one, instead of having to go through that entire giant list. Scroll should bring up a number. Oh, only one. There we go. That record has way too many subjects. That's my can I fit a lot of subjects into this record test. So if I only want to work with a particular subset of the records, I can just select the ones that I'm concerned with working in, do new results, and it will only show you the records that you've selected. With more advanced users, you will have access to quite a number of additional features. Print lists, you might have access to as a regular user, depending on whether the person doing the setup has made that available to you. That's the ability to print a list of records according to a particular template. You may be able to generate statistical report, export records, add and remove different kinds of classifications, or do a find and replace. All of these data management activities, which are really, really critical to be able to do on a number of records at once. So these are generally time-saving tools that allow you to do activities on many records at the same time. And again, this is the only way to do it, is through this select checkbox. In the volunteer software, you'll notice that by default, my display looks very different. It isn't in a table the way that it is in the community information side. I can change that through my display options by saying use table format. And I really strongly recommend that all data managers make use table format the default display. Oh, sorry.
You probably need to share your desktop.
So here I am in the volunteer change display options, and I've selected use table format. I really recommend that all volunteer data managers use the table format as their default display. So I would do that by saying save settings as my default. And then I reload my search, and you'll see it looks now just like what we saw in the community information side where it's formatted as a table. And immediately I have access to all of the same features that I had access to. Do it on my screen. Is that better, Chris?
Yeah, but you might want to minimize your stuff.
I did. So I now have access to all the same types of items that I had access to as the community information side. So I can add the custom fields, I can add the select checkbox, all of those other features that I could add in the community information side. The only way to do that in the volunteer side is to make sure that you use table format. If you don't, then it doesn't really matter what I select here. It will not be part of the display until I have it in the table format. Finally, I have the ability to change the order of my search results. There are a few predefined items like the name of the organization, the record number, when it's due to be updated, meaning the update schedule, where it's located. Relevancy is a special one. Relevancy only applies if you are doing a search that uses keywords. So one of those full text searches, either from the basic search or the advanced search, where you're searching for a number of keywords, relevancy ranks records that match better higher in your list. Now, these results can be somewhat mixed. So it will really be up to you as the user to decide whether you find searching by relevancy to be a helpful feature for you or not. It's a bit of a mixed bag because it's whatever the database software decides matches the best to the criteria that you have entered, and whether you agree with how the software does that ranking is questionable. So that is available to you, and I did want you to understand how that works and what that means. So relevancy only comes into play when you are doing a keyword search, a full text search. Otherwise, it would default back to the organization name. So if I had relevancy turned on as my order by, and I did a search that had nothing to do with keywords, it would default back to ordering by the name of the organization. Okay, one more thing about search results, and then we're going to move on from this. And that is the alert column. So let's get some more records here. The alert column is this little box you see here that might have letters in it. It might be colored red or bright orange, some other flashy color that we call the alert color. You'll see a number of different letters, B, C, X, P. What do all these letters mean? The best way to have a reference for this is to use the page help. Page help of your search results talks about what I have been saying here and has a lovely little what does it mean legend for your alert column. So a C, for instance, means that there are comments or an internal memo. F means the record has feedback. Someone has suggested a change to the record. A P is a record that is pending deletion. It hasn't been deleted yet, but it is slated to be deleted in the future. S no longer applies. That used to be a record that was shared between the Community Information and Business database, but that no longer is applicable. V is a record that has volunteer opportunities, and X is a record that has been deleted. Are there any further questions about your search results page? Okay. You'll notice a few records here that say unknown in brackets. Those are records that don't have anything in org level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The software is automatically inserting the value unknown. Okay. I'm going to talk a bit now about the record details page. So actually viewing a record. The content of your record details page is determined by whatever has been set up in your view. So the records that you see, or the records that the fields that you see are determined by whatever the super user in your database has made available to you in your view. Likewise, all of these header bars that you see, these are all determined in the setup. So if you don't like the way the information is organized, that's something that can be customized and is different depending on what your permissions are and what view you're in. So the public is going to see a different organization of the information than you as a staff member are going to see. There are some predefined fields at the top of most views that are logged in, but again, this is a setup choice. Depending on how many, or depending on your permissions, you may see only a few bits of information, like the record number when it was modified and updated. If they have given you access to more information, you'll see when it was created, deleted, who owns the record, and record use indicates how many times that record has been used. So if I reload the page, my record use goes to 3 because I've now visited that record 3 times. Besides just viewing the record, you have access to a number of different options. These, again, are determined by your permission. Suggest an update allows you to suggest changes to a record which do not take effect immediately. They are sent to the data manager, who then can use them as a basis for updating the record. If you have the permissions to do so, you would see an update record link. That allows you to make actual changes to the record. Create equivalent, in this case, means that there is no French equivalent record for this particular record, and I could click Create Equivalent to create a French record. If I do that, I now see Français instead of Create Equivalent, which would allow me to switch to the French version of the record. And vice versa, I can switch back to the English record if I'm in the French side. Once I have created an equivalent, I also have the ability to delete the equivalent by saying Delete French. Update service categories allows me to modify how the record is indexed with the infoline taxonomy. Update publications allows me to update the publication indexing for this record. Note that just because you don't own a record doesn't mean that you can't modify the publication information. They are two completely different types of security. So you may have the ability to update the publications for every single record that you can see, but you can only update the records that are owned by your agency. So if my agency is BTN and I can only update BTN records, that doesn't mean that I can't update the publication for some other records. The same holds true for service categories. I may be able to do taxonomy indexing for records that I can't update in any other way. That's why the management of these two items is separate from the updating of the rest of the records. So to update a record fully, you're looking at 3 different areas. You're looking at update the record. That includes the thesaurus. Update the service categories, which is the infoline taxonomy, and update the publications, which are the publications in general headings, as well as any related information like publication descriptions. Like so. So here I am in a publication where I can actually put in a publication description and some general headings. I'll go back to that in a moment. So those are the three components of updating the record fully. Email and update requests, again, this is controlled by your permissions. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your ability to update the record. Emailing an update request is something that data managers will do, and we'll cover that in that session. But the bottom line is that it's the ability to send an email out to the contact person for this organization, asking them to suggest an update to this record. A mail form is for those records that cannot be updated by email. It's a way for you to be able to print out the details of the record with lots of extra space for people to write in changes. That's why you see so much blank space. Okay? So this is something that you can mail or fax to the organization if you're not able to get updates by email. That always opens in a new window. Deleting the record. By default, deleting the record will only mark the record deleted. It will not actually remove it from the database. You will be asked to specify a specific date when you want the record to be deleted, so maybe now or sometime in the future. We'll cover most of this stuff in detail in the data management session, which is why I'm skimming over it so much today, because I just want you to know it's there, but the details of how it all works will be part of the data management session. Again, you can delete the French version if there is one. You can copy the record. This does not copy the taxonomy, but it copies everything else. You can create a new volunteer opportunity for the record, assuming that you have the permission to create volunteer opportunities. So if I was a user that only had permissions in the community information module, I would not see create volunteer opportunities. Just a sec, sorry, you have a question?
Yeah. I'm not, sorry, Lorna Gardner had a question about shortening the space so it doesn't print so many pages. I'm not clear on what you're...
I understand completely. Okay, so we've absolutely had the complaint in the past that the mail form has too much space, and that means that it's too many pages to have to send out either by fax or mail. There is an enhancement request already, which is to specify the amount of blank space that is available, but that enhancement has not been funded as of yet. So we do know that that is an issue for some people, that they really find that there is too much space on that form, and so we are aware that that is something that should be changed or should be configurable so people can make a choice. But at the moment, that isn't something that can be configured. It automatically puts, I think it's at least 2, maybe 3 blank lines in every field. And again, the reason that that's there is to give people the room to make changes. But we do understand that it does end up making the record incredibly long, and that in some cases people would like to be able to minimize that. But that's a future enhancement. Does that answer your question okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so a little bit more about the volunteer. So create volunteer opportunity would allow us to create a brand new volunteer opportunity for this organization. Email update all volunteer opportunities requests. This is, I'm going to get into this in the volunteer session, which is November 3rd, but email update all volunteer opportunities means send a generic email to this organization telling them the current volunteer opportunities that they have available, and also offering them the opportunity, whether or not they already have volunteer opportunities, offering them the chance to submit some new volunteer opportunities for their organization. So this would apply whether or not that organization already had volunteer opportunities or not. In addition, if this record had volunteer opportunities associated with it, you would see a link here to view the volunteer opportunities that were associated with this particular organization. Finally, we have print version. You may or may not see a print version link. This is determined, again, by the setup, whether or not a print version template has been assigned to the view that you are in. If it has, you can click print version. It will open in a brand new window. You can optionally specify a title, which doesn't apply in this particular print anyway. And you'll notice that it strips all of the links out. This particular template has been set up to be black and white. It includes the date that you're printing the page, and it strips out all of the menu. So if we do a comparison, this to this. And in fact, you can actually strip it down even more than this to make it even more print-friendly. This is an incredibly basic print template, which doesn't do any stripping or have any special disclaimers or any other information like that. You can customize your print template to look exactly like whatever you want it to look like for printing. But the bottom line is it removes all the links, all the menus, anything that would be cluttering up the page for the purpose of printing. Okay, and focuses only on displaying the information in a compact way. That always opens in a brand new window. The volunteer, I'm just going to very quickly show the volunteer details page, which looks incredibly similar. It has less options available, but similar options. Unfortunately, the volunteer cannot customize their headers. They only have two, opportunity details and more agency details. And there's a second menu available in the agency details. So that differs quite a bit from the community information, where everything is at the top. From the volunteer side, there's a second menu under the agency information, which contains menu items particular to the organization, rather than the menu item up here is particular to that particular opportunity. So up here you'll see the same kinds of things we saw: suggest an update, update record, email and update request. Down below, this more agency info would bring us back to the community information record on which this opportunity was saved. Other opportunities shows us all the volunteer opportunities associated with this organization. Create a new opportunity allows us to create a second volunteer opportunity for the same organization. And again, that email update all opportunities request sends that organization a generic email linking to all the opportunities they have, if any, and also sending them a link to a form to submit a brand new opportunity. So that's it for the record details page. Does anyone have any questions about the record details, or anything in general about the options available, understanding that most of those options are going to be part of the data management session? Sorry, Chris has stepped out, so I have to quickly go through the questions. Okay, so I don't think there's any other questions on the record details. What's next in my list? We should be most of the way through. So what I'm going to cover now, I'll make sure I do cover everything I was planning on covering. The other things I'm going to cover today are safe searches. I'm going to talk a bit about printing records using a print profile, because although I'm going to go into detail about printing records in the print session, which is the last session in December, I believe, most people hopefully will have access to a print profile of some kind, so I am going to go through today just the process of printing from an existing print profile. See if anything else is on my list. I think that's all I'm covering today. I'll quickly cover my account. So everyone with a login has the ability to change their name, initials, email, and password. Any other information about your account has to be changed by someone else. This also applies to super users. So that's part of why it's so important to have two super users in every database, because you as a super user can't change any of the details of your own account except the items in My Account, which is your name and your initials and your password. Anything to do with your security level has to be changed by a super user other than you. This is to prevent a situation where you accidentally remove your super user privileges and then nobody has super user privileges. So it's important that you have at least 2 super users per database, and if you need to make security changes to your account, someone else will have to do that for you. No one has the ability to modify any of the security information about their own account. I'm going to talk briefly about saved searches. If you perform a search with any frequency, then you may want to save that search to save yourself some time later. I really only recommend that you do this for a search that is very complex. So a search like I just did for childcare isn't complex enough for it to be worthwhile to save. Whereas some of the more complicated searches that I end up posting to the bulletin board that have add SQL, a good example is I just posted one for the volunteer software yesterday, right here, which is a really important query that identifies volunteer records that are not likely to come up in searches because they have not got all of the information filled out appropriately. So taking that as an example, if I did a volunteer advanced search, and I'm going to put this lovely complex bit of add SQL that I would never remember, and I'm going to do a search, I would want to save this search so that I could periodically come back to it and this allows me to have easy access to check for this particular problem on a regular basis without having to go and look up from the CIOC bulletin board what that long add SQL is that I would never be able to remember how to write again. Well, I would, but okay. Some of the options that I have available to me in my Save Search screen here are not available to someone who is not a super user. So this where clause is exactly the same as add SQL from the advanced search. So anything that I type in the where clause is exactly the same as whatever I might type in add SQL. And it would also include any of the SQL generated by the software in order to perform a particular search. So not just what I put in add SQL, but any part of my search is going to be put into this where clause. If I do not have the permission to do add SQL, I also do not have the permission to modify this where clause. So you will not see this section here, this where clause section, and will not be able to modify it unless you have the sufficient permissions to generally put in SQL of your choice. In that case, what you would have access to is simply the name and the notes, okay? And also the ability to share the search with other users. So in this case, if I want to make sure that any of the volunteer super users in this database are able to access this search and check for problems, I can share this search with other volunteer super users, and they would also have access to this search in their list of saved searches. I'm going to go back to the main menu and click Save Searches. And now I would see this is searches that have been shared in general with other people, and this would be my personal saved searches. When you pick a search from the list, it's going to give you the notes so that you can understand what that search is for. That's why it's so important to make sure that every search that you create and save has some notes to remind you about what that search does. And I can run either my own or any that were shared to me by virtue of my security, my permissions. In this case, I can also update any of my own searches, but not any of the searches that have been shared for me by others. Okay. One thing that people will notice if they use save searches with any regularity is that they can't save a search where they have done a select checkbox. So, show you what happens. So if I select a few results here and do new results, I no longer have a Save This Search button. Okay? That's because this does not count towards saving a search. It has to be something that was generated either from basic or advanced search in order to save it. You can't save a search that is a result of selecting specific records. All right? And in general, that isn't a good way to bring up a list of records on a regular basis. If you have a small list of records that you need to be able to pull up on a regular basis, you should be tagging those records with some kind of a classification so that you can identify them later, rather than trying to pick them out and save the search. So the Save Search applies equally to community information and volunteer. They're completely separate searches. So from the community information menu, you would have only searches that apply specifically to community information, and likewise from volunteer, you would only have searches that apply particularly to the volunteer side. And as I said, in general, these should only be things that are going to be difficult for you to recreate later. And often your friendly neighborhood super user may create some of the more complex searches for you that they want to have their data managers or information and referral people to have access to, where they don't have the ability to create those searches themselves because, say, they cannot do add SQL. So this allows you to give your other users access to searches that require add SQL, even though they don't have permission to do add SQL themselves. You can build that search and then share it with them. You do have a limit to the number of searches that you personally can have. Every user can have up to 50 searches each. Okay? So do periodically go and get rid of searches that you're not actually wanting to keep. If you're getting near your 50, then what you need to do is purge ones that you're not using anymore. Please be aware that with any software upgrade, it is entirely possible that your old saved searches will stop working. If you are able to edit your own searches, meaning you have that add SQL privilege, then you can post on the bulletin board after an upgrade and put the text of your search and say, you know, this isn't working anymore, and I would be able to tell you how to correct it to make that search work again, or you can just completely rebuild that search from scratch and save it again. But any time that a field is renamed or moved to a different table or any other structural change that might happen during a software upgrade, it's entirely possible that your old saved searches can stop working. This shouldn't happen on a regular basis, but it can happen. And recently we had a major software upgrade that did change a large number of significant fields, that, like the deletion date, non-public, things that would be in a lot of your saved searches. So it can periodically happen that a lot of your past saved searches will break. And if you want to keep them, it can be as simple as recreate it if you know how, or just post on the bulletin board, say, this is the text of my search, it's not working anymore, and I would respond and tell you how you would change that search to make it work with the software changes. Okay? All right, I'm going to take a look for questions here. Does anyone have any questions about safe searches? Okay. So I think we're going to finish up early today, which is great. So I think the last thing on my list is about printing records. So there are two ways to print records. At the end, anyone who wants to stay for a really brief explanation of taxonomy, advanced taxonomy search can, but I'll only be covering those in detail in the classification section. So I'll quickly cover printing records. There are two ways to print records. One is here from your menu, where you can select records based on a publication code and print only records that belong to that publication code. The other way is through your basic search or any search and selecting the particular records that you want to print and picking print list. Okay? So either one of those will work. You'll notice that if you pick specific records, the only thing that you can print is the body of the publication, meaning the information about the record. Whereas if I go through my list from the main menu, I have access to two completely different sections, one for generating a name index and one for generating a subject index. Okay? In the volunteer software, you only ever have access to the printing of records. There is no name index or subject index in the volunteer software, but every other aspect of print profiles applies equally to the volunteer software, except there is no name index and no subject index. Okay. So the basic setup of a print profile is just printing any field or fields from the record in a particular format determined by whoever has set up the profile. You can have as many print profiles as you want in your database, and the person who sets up the print profile also determines who has access to those particular profiles. So someone who has limited access to certain fields in their record, you would also like to limit the print profiles that they have so they don't get access to fields that they normally wouldn't have access to. To generate your print list, you first select a profile and then select a publication, or in the case of doing it through select checkbox, you would have already picked the specific records that you want to print with your profile. You'll have the option to customize a report message. There may be a default message already there. So I may come to this screen and it would already have some default message here that I could choose to leave or customize. That's dependent on the person who set the profile up. And then next we'll open in a new window my print list. Okay, and you'll see my default message is printed at the top here. And in this case, it's going to print before every record. So the exact format of what these print reports look like is completely determined by the person who set that print profile up, okay? But this is just one example where we have a little header with some lines and the address, phone, fax, so on. The exact fields and structure and formatting and font and everything to do with how this profile looks is determined by the person who set up the print profile. And we'll be covering the details of how to do print profiles in the session in December. Besides the basic print list, the name index allows you to print a list of, well, it's either names and alternate names, and optionally you can include email, phone, fax, all of these fields that you see here. So if you want to create, although we call it a name index, it can also be a phone index, an email index, and so on. Cross-reference names means that those alternate names that I was saying, within the record itself, you have designated whether or not a particular alternate or former name is going to be published as a cross-reference. What that ties back to is here, when I'm going to print the name index, it will list any of those alternate or former names that I've marked as published as cross-reference, and it will tell the person to use use whatever name instead. So it allows people to look up a particular record by those other names, and that they would file in the appropriate alphabetical place in the index. Note that none of these indexes are done by page number. Rather, they're done by record number. I think that, yeah, so this particular profile, I've included the record numbers, so you can see they start numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. When I generate my name index, those numbers that you see here, okay, that is what is going to be used in the name and phone index to reference back to the full record. All right, and that's why it's incredibly important that you run your publication list and your name, phone, subject, etc. indexes at the same time. Because if this numbering changes, because let's say I introduce a record that goes between 7 and 8, and now what was record 8 is record 9, and I haven't run my name index at the same time as the rest of my print list, then the numbering is going to be completely wrong, and it's not going to reference the right records when I look up, Burlington Model Railway Club. In my index is going to say 9, but in my print list is going to say 8. So it's incredibly important that you run these indexes at the same time as your list in order to get accurate information and accurate numbers. I'll run a sample of the name index, and again, you can optionally include phone number fields if you want to. Cross-reference names would mean that it would show those alternate or former names that have been designated as cross-reference. I'll explain what field data width is in a minute, so I'll first just start by running this. Okay, so here is printing my office phone, and again, these numbers represent the same numbers that I saw here, assuming I'm doing it for the same publication. And you'll see that for organizations that have multiple names, they are indented within their hierarchy. And if you have, like this one, multiple records under the same organization, they will all be filed within the hierarchy. Okay. So these dot leaders, you can choose whether or not to include. If you do want to use dot leaders, it's extremely important that when you are printing, you specify whether you're going to print your print list from your browser, meaning I would be right here and I would say File, Print Preview, and print right from my browser like this, or whether I plan on bringing this into Microsoft Word because I'm going to want to do some additional formatting, change the page size, add page numbering, whatever the case may be. It's really important that you say that you're going to use it in Microsoft Word. You'll notice if I do it from Microsoft Word, I don't see any indenting, I don't see any dot leaders. It looks like a big mess. But when I bring this file, when I save it by doing File, Save File, and then save it in and open it in Microsoft Word, it will look completely different. So it will look the way that this one looks in the browser. This will look like that in Microsoft Word. So that's why it's so important that you make sure you specify whether this is something you're going to print from your browser or print from Microsoft Word. At the moment, we only support those two options. So it's either print from your browser or print from Microsoft Word. The field data width is really dependent on how big of a page you plan to print your final product on. So if I change my field data width to 100, you can see how far across the dot leaders come over, and that the office phone looks very squished, as opposed to over here where the dot leaders come much less far across, and there's lots of room for the office phone field. Okay, so the setting field data width is how much space I'm allocating for any of these special fields like office phone, fax, toll-free phone that I'm going to include. All right, and that keeps them from getting squished the way that this is, or if you're only including really brief set of information, like, for example, if I just erase the word office and only want to print the phone number, then this actually prints quite nicely with the long leader, and I don't need the extra space in order to make it fit. Okay, so you do have some control over how wide across these dots are going to go and how much space is allocated for those extra fields that you might add. Sorry, my computer's really slow. Records must have data in at least one of the selected fields. This is important if you're creating say a phone list. If I want to say office phone, records must have data in at least one of the fields, it's only going to include in the index records that have an office phone. Okay, so this would then become a phone list. Whereas if I don't say that, it's entirely possible for me to have records such as this one that do not have a phone. So it would not include anything here for a phone. It's going to include all of the records, whether or not they have a phone number or not. The subject index works very similarly. Although it's called a subject index, it's important to understand that the subjects are actually general headings based on the particular publication that you're working with. So, I don't know if this one has any. Yes, it does. Yay. So in this case, the GAIN publication has a number of general headings assigned to it, and when I generate a subject index for that particular publication, it's going to highlight each of the general headings. In this case, here's Abuse and Crisis Intervention All, and then list all of the organizations and programs that belong to that heading. And again, here's another. There is the heading, and it will list all the organizations that belong to that heading, one after another. So in the case of a subject index, it's going to print the same organizations multiple times if they are listed under multiple categories. Does anyone have any questions about name, subjects, print profiles, understanding that I will be covering them in great detail, including how to set them up in the session in December? Okay. Let me do a quick check and see if I have covered everything I wanted to cover today. Yep, I think so. All right, so general questions on anything covered today, which is basically anything the public can do, basic operations that are not related to data management or set up, particularly around searching. So open questions if anyone has anything related to what we've covered today. Oh, page numbers. Okay. You cannot do page numbers. And the reason that you can't do page numbers is from online, there is no way to understand how anyone's particular browser or page setup is going to format the records. So because the software in which we're producing the information isn't word processing software, and browsers have no sense of pages or page numbers, there really is no ability for us to determine which page numbers any particular record is going to fall on. So using the tool as it exists right now, it's just not possible to do any of the indexes using page numbers. We would have to do a completely different system in order to do that, and it's next to impossible to do that accurately and nicely online. you have some hope of doing that using some PDF systems, but it's extremely complicated, and yeah, it's extremely complicated and not very portable. And we often have questions about that, specifically around doing things like mailing labels, because we have the same kind of struggle in that when you go to print mailing labels, it's very much to do with the specific orientation size of a particular page, whereas the web is not oriented around paper, it's oriented around screen, and it makes it incredibly difficult to try and force technology designed around your screen to work well with paper. So it's we have the same issues there. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, if that's it, then we get off early today, and if you have any follow-on questions, feel free to post them on the bulletin board. We'll be going into, obviously, a lot more detail in the future sessions. This particular session was really geared towards the most basic things that CIOC can do. So hopefully it wasn't too boring for those of you who have more CIOC experience. The lead-on sessions from this one all go into a lot more detail about specific activities that you can do around data management and setup and so on. So I really encourage you to participate in some of those later sessions to get more information about the data management and setup activities. In particular, anyone who uses the volunteer software, the session on November 3rd is going to be really, really important to understand some of the big changes that have happened in the last 6 months, and there's going to be one more software upgrade within about a week, and that has a pretty major volunteer upgrade in it as well. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.